This week in Grace's Girls Club, I'm coming to you with a member of the Society of Women Engineers. They've been a big part of Grace's Girls Club lately, and I'm excited for you to meet another member. I want to introduce you to Michelle. Michelle, welcome to Grace's Girls Club. Please introduce yourself, tell us your title and the company you work for.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Grace. My name is Michelle Williams. I am the Director of Software Engineering at Qualis LLC, and I'm also a visiting lecturer at Auburn University in the Samuel Ginn College of Engineering.
Well, there you have it. Already impressive. Walk me through a little bit of what Qualis does.
So Qualis has been in the Huntsville area for over 30 years. We develop critical technologies at our Advanced Technical Center for national security and space programs.
Wow. So with you specifically with the software component, you probably have more on your hands than you know what to do with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Walk me through
Great way to
some of the
describe it.
day to day with that.
Okay, so engineering is really about solving problems and building things that help people. And as the director of software engineering, my job is really to help my team create smart and useful software. It's really the brains behind the technology that we use every day. And so I spend a lot of my time helping my team work through tough challenges, come up with innovative solutions, and just work together as a team. And, because software is often just one part of a bigger system, I work closely on a day-to-day basis with other engineers, like those who build the hardware or those who design how things fit together so we can create something amazing together as a team.
Oh, that's a great point. I hadn't thought much about the collaboration there, but of course, that makes perfect sense. So, is a lot of what you do coming up with new software from the beginning, I mean, originating it, or are you also working on advancing some software that already exists?
It's a little bit of both. It really depends on what our customers need, what their missions require. If they require their existing technologies to be extended in some new way, then we'll work with them to extend an existing technology. And then there's also novel ideas that we come up with to solve solutions that our customers may be looking for. So it's a little bit of both.
You go, girl. You're like, we can do either one. We do it all. What do you need? We got you.
Exactly, we do.
That's awesome. So, transition now a little bit of your role at Auburn as a professor there. What does that look like? Kind of the ins and outs of that role.
Well, as a visiting lecturer right now, because I only have a master's degree, I'm currently working on my PhD. I design special topics that I teach or lecture on when there's a slot available or when people are interested in the topic that I'm presenting. A couple of the topics that I've developed are rapid prototyping and software process. So those are the two special topics that I have offered at the university.
That's awesome. I always loved when visiting lecturers came in college. My professors were smarter than anybody. They were brilliant. But it always was just that little extra step to have a visiting lecturer in the real world come tell you the newest, the most up to date information,
Right.
get to ask them questions about the industry. That was always such a blessing.
Yes, yes.
So at Qualis, I have a feeling I know your answer to this question, but of the letters in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, which would you say most applies to your role?
That's a good question, Grace. And it's a tough one because honestly, they all apply in my role. And, I use building a robot as an example. We've got teams who can build the arms and the legs, which are the mechanical parts of the robot. And then we've got teams who can do the eyes and the ears, which are the sensing part of the robots. And then, my team, we do the brain, which controls what the robot does. And so with STEM, you've got the science, the S, you've got the folks who need to understand how the robot and its parts behave. And then you've got the technology, which is what we use to develop the solutions, to power it, to control it. And then we've got the engineering part, which that's how we design all the parts of the robot that work together. And then we've got the math. We've got to figure out how much power we need to move the robot, how fast it needs to move. And so it really takes all parts of STEM to build something innovative in our particular area of work.
And that's what's so interesting about your field to me. Most women that I interview on Grace's Girls Club love their jobs, and kind of one, often two letters of STEM will appeal to them. However, you really do use every single one, and that's exciting if
Yes,
you're a young woman looking to get into the field.
it is very exciting.
So,
Very exciting, and it
oh, go ahead.
exposes you to other areas of expertise, which is also a perk of working in software. You get to work with so many other domain experts that you've got this, rubbing shoulders with a lot of really smart people. So that's an additional benefit.
Absolutely. I could see that in a heartbeat. So, speaking of young women and of the next generation, you mentioned you're pursuing your PhD, which is very impressive. But up until this point, walk me through the type of schooling and degree that you had to get to this place, and then what educational advice you might have for that next generation.
Okay. I actually didn't start out in engineering. I worked in banking for almost 10 years before I decided to become a software engineer. And so I started by taking my core classes like math, science, and English at Calhoun. That took me a couple of years. And then I transferred to UAH, and then where I earned my bachelor's degree in computer science. And that took me another 3 years. So all total, it took me 5 years to finish my bachelor's. And that's because, during my last year and a half, I did something called co-op, which means I worked a semester at a real engineering job, and then I went to school for a semester. And so that hands-on experience was incredibly valuable. It taught me things I couldn't have learned in the classroom. So that's what I did before I started my career. And then maybe 15 to 16 years into my career, I decided I was ready to do my master's, and I finished that up at Auburn University, and then now I'm working in my PhD.
Wow, that's an awesome story. I love that. I feel so often like we're almost like we're pigeonholed right out of high school. You pick your degree. A lot of times people change their
Yes.
major in college, but then once you graduate, that's your job. However, you really reinvented yourself. I mean, you went from one very successful career to another. That's pretty impressive.
Thank you. Yes.
So, as far as software engineering goes, walk me through the characteristics of someone who might be a good candidate for your field. So, for meteorology, I would say someone who loves physics, someone who loves thermodynamics, does well under pressure and with time constraints for the TV component, and then maybe someone who can take big ideas, scientific, and make them understandable to everybody. What might be the characteristics of someone who's a good fit for your field?
So I think there's a place for every kind of curiosity in STEM, and that's especially true in software engineering. A good candidate is someone who's curious about how things work. They enjoy figuring things out. It helps to be able to explain your ideas clearly, because when you're working in a team, you're sharing what you've learned, and that's a big part of the job. You also need to like, taking information and using it to design something new or redesign something old, like solving a puzzle or building from a blueprint or adding an addition from a blueprint. That's a great fit too. And, since technology is always changing, someone who enjoys learning new things, that is so important. And you don't have to be a techie, that's okay. If you're curious, you're creative, and you're willing to keep learning, then I think that's a large part of, you already have a large part of what it takes to be a good software engineer.
Wow, that is great advice, and I would imagine very true. Those characteristics you listed can be applicable, like you said, to so many of the
Yeah.
STEM fields. So, walk me
Yeah.
through why you chose software engineering. What made you bridge the gap between banking and this? Then, 15 years later, go decide to get your master's. What exactly was the heart behind all of it?
That's another great question, Grace. So the truth is, I didn't choose the field chose me. I was working in banking, and I felt bored and unchallenged. And, around that time, computers were starting to show up in offices. We were moving from old terminals to PCs with Windows 3.1. And so that's when I discovered software, and I got so interested that I became the kind of unofficial tech support for my branch manager. And so one day my manager just looked at me and she said, "You need to go to school and do something with computers." And I thought about it for maybe about a month, and I was like, you're right. And I turned my resignation in and went back to school. And so, what really drew me in was the idea that I could never know everything.
Hmm.
There's always more to learn in this field, and that's what has kept it exciting. And 28 years later, I'm still learning, I'm still building, I'm still enjoying the outcome of what I do.
So you brought up two amazing points. One, the need to continuously be challenged. I have friends in every single STEM field that say, if they're not being challenged for a year, for 2 years, let's pivot. Let's see if I can get another certification. Let's see if there's something else within the realm
Yes,
of my degree that I can do. I think it's so important that you identified that in yourself.
yes, absolutely.
The other
The
key
desire
thing,
not to be stagnant, yes, and to be better.
I'm sorry, say again?
I said that just the innate desire to be better and not be stagnant. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, I completely agree. The other thing that I loved you said was it was your manager that encouraged you. So often, I think it's our mentors, our teachers, our bosses that encourage us to take that next step. And when these young girls are going out and looking for their own job, I want them to align themselves with a team that their manager will be one that does that, something similar to what
Yes,
happened in your situation.
absolutely. It's very important.
So, walk me through the best part of your job in the day to day.
Ooh, it's hard to find it in the day to day. The day to day, the day to day is hard to find the best parts. It's the end, the outcome of the day to day that really is the best part of the job. Like most folks working in Huntsville, the people who use the what my team builds are usually members of the military. And so the best part of my job is knowing that the software that we create helps them to do their jobs better or helps to keep them safe. That's really the best part of my job.
That's awesome. What are potentially some of the biggest challenges that you have to face at work?
At this point in my career, my biggest challenge probably is just prioritizing the things that I need to do every day because there's so much to do and they all seem so equally important. So it's really a challenge to figure out, what's most important. I would say early on in my career, my biggest daily challenge was, and you mentioned this, mentorship. As a female in a majority male field, it's hard to find mentorship. And so, you know, one of the ways to address that is to be a part of communities like SWE or some of the other organizations that you'll professional organizations that'll be out there that our girls will see and hear about. It's important to be involved with that because it's hard to find mentorship on the day to day in the workplace for women.
I 100% agree with that.
Mhm.
So, we'll give you an opportunity here to be a little bit of a mentor. My last question for you, before I let you get back to what I'm sure is a very busy day, but what advice, what wisdom do you have to give to the next generation of young girls looking to get involved in STEM?
Make the most of the resources around you. Join STEM clubs, get involved in programs like SWE, and look for ways to explore science and technology in your school. Take advantage of a lot of all the resources that we have available today to be self-taught. Google, IBM, Amazon, Microsoft, they all offer free training, and so there's really no reason why you can't learn new things on your own. So if you're really interested, then you'll take that initiative to increase your skill set even before you get into the professional environment or even start your higher level education. But I think more importantly is to lean into what makes you unique. Let your curiosity, your creativity, and your perspective guide you in the world of STEM. There's no one way to be great at STEM. And I think it's those things that make us unique that help us to be, when we lean into them, help us to be successful and really find our niche in STEM.
Oh my gosh, I love that. If Grace's Girls Club had a slogan, it would be, "There's no one way to be good at STEM." That's awesome and
Oh,
so true.
yeah, yeah.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much for your time today. Michelle Williams with Qualis, thank you for being here. It's such an honor to have you, and welcome officially to Grace's Girls Club.
Awesome. Glad to be a member. Thank you for having me, Grace.